All right. Kellie, Laura, welcome to The Difference.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so glad to have you guys. We've been looking forward to this episode for a bit because we have all of this fun technology that we have going out, devices and all that kind of stuff, new apps for our associates. But we want to bring in two of the leaders that are behind the scene, kind of get behind the scenes of how all this happens, and to give associates kind of a glimpse of how we think about technology, specifically for associates, as well as how we think about the development of tools and that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's going to be a fun discussion. Mm-hmm. And Kellie, you're all the way in from Dallas.
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Came in yesterday.
What's your, tell everybody your title and kind of just what you do.
You bet. So I am the vice president of our associate technology. I also look after some of our retail technology from a product perspective in the stores. So I get to work with technology and associates all day long.
Nice.
And to make things happen for them and make their lives easier on the sales floor and serve our customers.
That's great. All right, Laura, Jacques, you want to go through what you do?
Yes. How long do we have?
You have about 15 seconds. Go ahead.
So I'm Lara and I'm the Vice President of Associate Experience for Walmart US. And what that means is I get to work with business partners like Kellie as we work to deliver simplification, strategic investments, and better ways for our associates to connect with each other and, more importantly, probably the customer.
Awesome. We all work pretty closely together.
Much like this morning, where we are all very close.
Yes, that's
together.
true.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. This is we're all closer. I am somewhat claustrophobic, but that's okay. I'll get over it.
We'll probably just keep
Yeah,
leaning back.
keep leaning back. All right. You had a fun trip in. What happened?
Yeah, I did. I got to fly here twice.
Oh, man.
So it's a quick, easy flight or a drive, a little bit longer drive. And we were about to land, and they're like, we can't land. There's a plane in the way.
Oh,
so there was a
no.
military jet on the runway, and we turned around, went back to Dallas.
They had an
Yeah.
emergency landing?
Yeah, they had military jet had an emergency landing of fire. Thank goodness no one was injured, no one was hurt, and so there was no passengers on board, only the crew. They took care of it though, and then we deboarded, got a snack, and got back on the plane and came back here.
Wow.
Well, it's a great place to be. So I was happy to be here twice, fly twice.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, so we have been working on devices and apps and that
right.
kind of stuff. But what I wanted to talk about, just get your thoughts on user experience, associate experience. You know, we kind of have this mentality that we want to improve the associate experience through technology, and we almost view like companies would view a customer, and we want to improve that experience. We try to take that same lens with our associates, and how do we understand the friction points throughout their days in their life, and then what can we do to solve those over time. But Kellie, with you, how do you kind of view user experience? What's your kind of philosophically, how do you think about solving problems for them, whether that's associates or customers? But for us, I guess associates, like how do you think through that?
You bet. Well, first off, we show up at the store and we see what they're doing, how they're using it, how they're moving through their day. And then we think about the technology. They shouldn't have to be trained on the technology. It should be, commercial grade, right? Customer grade technology that our associates use every day in the store. Easy, simple to use, intuitive, that's relative for their job that they're doing.
That's right. So when you think of like a individual person, an individual task, like how do you work with the team to understand exactly, like how do you get the user feedback at the very beginning of solving a problem?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, the dynamic duo between Laura and I, she definitely keeps us grounded in all the roles and activities that we have. And then we take those and say, okay, then how are the stores operationalizing those roles? So we take the operations, their role that they're situated in, and then we begin to understand the tasks that they need to do. And then we take those and transform them. And what we don't do is look at everything individually, right? Because you don't look at your day individually. It's a fluid experience.
That's right.
So how do we put all that together where it makes sense, it's natural for the user to move through their day, and we're prioritizing the work for the associate for that store?
Got it. Yeah, I think it's, Laura, we've been talking about the associate journey, and Kellie, kind of like you said, you experience your work experience is throughout the day is fluid, right? And then what we're trying to do is document and understand through feedback where do we need to enhance that, and then we come up with solutions. But you've been working on this for a couple years on how we rethink the way of associate experience. What's kind of your philosophical approach to how we enhance it?
Yeah, it's probably a couple of things. I think one component of the approach is just like, how do you integrate, right, technology and into the day-to-day experience of an associate, to Kellie's point, in the same way that we live our lives outside of work and interact with technology outside of work. So one of the team's mantra is like, we just want associates to be able to work how they live. And to your point, like, when you work how you live, like in your day, you have disruptions, you have unplanned things that happen, you meet people, you want to connect with people. And so we want to design an experience that enables associates to do that and kind of see this convergence of, I'm able to connect with people, right, on work-related things or non-work-related things. I'm able to interact with customers throughout the day in whatever way they choose to interact with us, and I'm able to get work done. I'm able to be productive and feel a sense of accomplishment, right, as I leave work or finish doing the thing, right, that I need to do. So, again, long way around saying, like, we just want them to be able to work how they live, have some flexibility, have some autonomy, have some ownership, and at the end of the day, feel like they were connected, and like what they did mattered, that they made a difference. Shameless plug for the name of your podcast, but like, you just want to make them feel like they made a difference. I think that's how a lot of us want to feel at the end of our workday. Right.
I want to get into autonomy and decision making. I think that's a really good one. But before we get into that, walk through, like, you guys kind of the dynamic duo on devices as well, right? So walk through, Laura, if you can, why we chose to do devices, but more importantly, why did we choose the idea of you can use it at work, you can use it at home, and giving associates that type of autonomy?
Yeah. Oh, I could talk about this for a long time. Why did we choose to give associates devices? So many reasons. One is the work is changing, right? So previously, if you've been with Walmart for a minute, like, devices or technology in stores were reserved for certain levels, and generally that was leadership, right? But over the last few years, we've been bringing technology to bear in stores in new ways, simplifying work, and expecting associates to do that work. And in order to be successful there, like, you need a device to manage that, right? So we quickly realized, as we were transforming just the way we work, that devices would be part of our future. Secondarily, to your point, like, we made the decision to have the devices, again, consumer grade, as Kellie mentioned, and available to associates to use as a personal device outside of work. And that I think was one of the best decisions we could have made, because that democratizes access, again, not only to information at work, right, and help you be productive in your job, but it democratizes access to information, services, all kinds of things outside of work, where we know there are gaps there just, today. So it kind of became like more of this social responsibility aspect. And I think that brought on new meaning with the onset of the pandemic, where you had associates and people in general who were struggling with kids to do their schoolwork, things like that. And so these moments, as awful as some of those moments were, right, were kind of catalysts and validated the importance of the decision that we made in that space, I think.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting decision. I think we're some of one of the first companies to do something like this. And, I think it goes back to thinking through the associate experience holistically, and not just saying, hey, they need a tool, associates need tools to do their job. It's more about how does it interact with their lives, and give them a tool that they can use as well. When you think, Kellie, about autonomy and ownership, at the same time you're building tools to do the job, or you're giving devices, how do you balance one way of doing something versus, hey, allow the individual or the user that's performing the task or using the technology to have autonomy and choices to be made. How do you balance that in development?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can talk about and expand on one of the examples Laura brought up with helping the customer. So we have your task in here. We know what you need to be doing, but a customer walks up and you need to help the customer. So the phone is smart, and we're building things where if you set it down, it knows it's not being used. It can pause your task or some of the things we're building for the future. And then when you pick it back up, maybe give you an alert or a haptic, right? Or a signal, right? To know, great, now you need to go do this and continue. So we want to make sure we have that flexibility for the associate to know where they left off, what they're doing, and I need to go serve a customer, or I've been pulled over here to help someone else, right? Or help another fellow associate. So I think that is really key, that we can't just have this be a script. It needs to be infused in what they're doing, how they like to work, and have the associate make sure their personality is still at work and they can bring their whole self to work.
That's right.
And I think that's so important. And, one other great thing with the Samsung, as to expand upon what Laura said, it has your work side and your personal side. So, this is completely separate and independent. So to the point is I can take it home, and then when I bring it and have my whole personal side, on the next cover. And then when I go to work, I just simply push a button and I have my work side.
That's great.
And I think that also allows us to have some individuality about when they take a break. Maybe they need to go do something quickly on their phone, and they can have that right there in the palm of their hand. They don't have to go and get or unlock something or get something from a locker.
Got it. Yeah, it's there's a lot of discussion with the rise of automation, rise of technology, the fear of this, of humanity being pulled out in general, not just in our work, but in a lot of work. And we talk about the future of work a lot. I think the trick is how do you enhance the experience of workers through technology? And enhancing maybe automating some manual tasks or giving technology, but at the same time allowing associates to make decisions. Because at the end of the day, if you want autonomy in the work that you do, and you want good, rewarding work, a lot of that comes down to my ability to make decisions, my ability to have something that I can pour myself into and make better, and then have some autonomy, some levers to pull. And I think that's a careful balance that we try to strike in all that we do. And I think you've seen that too, just with not just devices, but even the way that we have structured our stores and the way that we have really tried to push as much ownership and decision making as low as possible.
Yeah. I think it goes back again to access, right? Like we just want associates, leaders as well, to have access to information, to have visibility, right, to the tasks that need to be done, those that are most valuable, key considerations, et cetera, and then you make the call, right? Because no machine, to your point, like can see and know all of the things, but we see and know a lot of things in terms of data and intel and insights and operational process and customer behaviors and things like that. So you can serve that information up in such a way that enables and reinforces kind of this ownership model that, to your point, we're instilling in a lot of different ways. Technology is just an example of that.
That's right.
Absolutely. And I think giving them, to your point, data and serving out information that's contextual and in context. A great example, I mean, Drew, I know you like to bake.
Yes, all the time.
And cook in the
Avid
kitchen.
baker.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So if someone was, we don't have many pie pans or baking sheets on the shelf, and they're sitting in returns, right? We might be able to put an alert out there to say, it's Thanksgiving in the U.S. We need to go and get those pie pans and those baking sheets back onto the sales floor. And so just understanding that data and contextualizing, that probably won't matter as much in July, but pretty important in November.
Got it. Yep.
I love that so much because I feel like, so I help a lot with talent development, figuring out ways to connect people with people. And a lot of this here with me at having the devices, technology here, it's opened up a lot more space and time for people to make those connections, whether it's through helping developing someone, whether it's kind of showing them, hey, here's how this works, or having that space to kind of build those relationships with people that they work with and customers. I think it's great.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
That's a great point, because on the roster, when you work in a big super center and there's maybe 600 associates in a super center, I can see who's on the clock. I can send them a text. I can leave them a voicemail. I can connect with them. I can create, like you said, networks, and then also help, make the store run better. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that piece of it.
Yeah. It's cool how we're giving tools but still keeping autonomy, and I think it's been interesting for us to go down that journey. And as we move forward, I think it's really important. I think a careful principle that we all have is for an associate to enjoy what they do, we need to enhance it with technology, but allow them and give them the tools to be able to make decisions to take care of customers and to connect with each other. And if we stay kind of on that mantra, what we see is a great associate experience, right? Which is good. So all of these tools are meant to kind of do that. Now, behind the scenes of how that gets created, that's a whole nother story. And I'm sure people are thinking, how do they
do that?
Who's thinking like this?
Yeah.
But for you, for both of you, you think about cross-functional work. We're constantly working together, and there's different areas of the company, whether it's product or there's business or there's technology. There's user experience, and we kind of have to meld these teams together to really listen to associates, understand their problems, then create solutions. How do you view this cross-functional teamwork? And just from a leader perspective, what are some of your expectations, and how do you work through that?
One of my favorite hashtags is better together. And because we have to not think about it as Laura's a separate team from me. We're in this together. And if we find out some information or have an expectation that might not be quite in line with maybe what you want us to do, we make sure we talk immediately, right? And we get aligned on it. But I think, Drew, in all seriousness, we have the 4 in the box structure that we use, and when it's applied and the team really emerges themselves, that 4 in the box and that teamwork is just that. It's a team. Yeah. It's one team working together to make things happen, and not keeping information or not whose role is it. It's you're working together and you're using your strengths, and we're playing to everyone's strengths in that 4 in the box to move things forward and make things happen, and being very connected. And what connects us is the technology, the product, and the customer that we're serving.
Yeah, the problem you're trying to solve.
100%.
We have teaming in stores, which is we have teams working on their function, but then we also have times where we pull resources to solve problems for customers inside of stores. So it's kind of the same thing, right? So at the home office, we do the same type of thing. We're solving customer or associate issues or problems, and we're doing this cross-functional way. So it's an element of teaming.
It's very similar.
It's very similar, right? What's some of your insights that you have from a home office perspective and how that team gels and comes together?
Yeah. I have to say that I've been immensely impressed with the Connected Associate 4 in the Box team in particular, and I appreciate that I'm a little bit biased.
Yes,
but
you are.
just the way that they've embraced the ways of working, and it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, as we say, right? To start, like, it was a new way of working, just like teaming. But to Kellie's point, like, once you structure it the right way, right, and help associates understand, to her point, like, their role, like, for my team, we represent the business, the problems to be solved, the strategic direction, and kind of the desired outcomes, right? And what I like about the 4 in the box way of working is we spend a lot of time grounding the team, the cross-functional team, on why are we doing this work? What are the problems to be solved? And what's the role that you play in delivering this solution for associates in stores? And again, like teaming, you then have extreme clarity around the mission. Like, that's this right. is the hill that I'm meant to take, and we're meant to take it together. You build this mutual respect for the work that other people do. Yep. And then you start to see this, like, environment start to take shape where at times, Kellie, like in our product reviews and such, I forget that, like,
who's on which team.
Like, Chris on my team is meant to be the business, but sometimes, the way that he talks about the work and the way that he interacts with the team, it's like he could be part of product or tech. Same thing with Ali. I feel like he can tell you, again, exactly why we're going down this path, and, like, all about the associate experience and problems to be solved, et cetera. And that, he's not on the business side. But it's just been so fun to see that. I'll use the word fun now. Like I said, it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns to start, but I think, and it's hard work. Right. Like, these are hard yards that these teams are running together. But it's just been so fun and impressive. to see that take shape
That's
and to
right.
see the end result, to see them in stores together, interacting with associates, and to see this vision coming to life. So it's a different way of working. I think for our home office teams, for sure, we certainly haven't arrived by any stretch of the imagination, but I've just been so grateful to have a front row seat into the transformation of our ways of working here, and it's now paying off, I think, in speed and quality of product that we're putting out.
That's right.
Well, and I think we're incredibly inclusive.
Yeah.
The work is meaningful, and no one's afraid to roll up their sleeves. And, I test all the time. I mean, do I have to? I want to. It's not about have to. You want to. We get in stores, we go take a look at it. And to your point, it's fun. And then we're also creating meaningful moments within the technology. For instance, I just had my 1 year anniversary. Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you very much. And it was great to log into Me App that day because I log on every day and it said, Happy Anniversary, Kellie. Right? So, and I have to say, it was a meaningful moment.
Yeah.
I took a screenshot.
Yeah. Feels good.
I did. Yeah.
Feels
it
good.
It does feel good. And to that point, I came in, very long career in hospitality, and I felt immediately included. And really the four in the box ways of working was so natural to just go and be immersed and get the work done. And I think that, bringing all different folks together from different walks of life and having that diversity within the four in the box group really drives a better product.
So as we talk a lot about inclusion and specifically how are you an inclusive leader? And we've had these discussions in the past, Alexis, where the leader of tomorrow, their job really is to create the environment for their teams to be successful. And one environment that we think is important is that you create an environment where everybody feels like their voice is heard and they're included. How do you approach that, even in a cross-functional perspective?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the tips and tricks you may have for that?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm excited we're starting to get back in the office and spend more time in the stores and collaborating together. So I think a couple of things. I think one, it is, making sure you're recognizing people and it's just not one voice, right? And that we stop and we look at it from different perspectives. And we'll say, Laura, what do you think? Kellie, what do you think? We make sure we're coming at it and we hear from all sides of our box. Yeah. And then I think also these folks have different relationships. The teams work at, they have different meetings with their four in the box and the levels, right? And it's collaboration. It's a safe space.
Yeah, that's so important, right?
So important. I was on a design review with Val Casey's team the other day, and I have it every week, and it's a very safe space. We just roll around in it, and it's like, okay, let's go roll around it before we bring the product team. This isn't a presentation. Yep. This is a conversation to understand how we do things better, and then also bring your experience to the table. I saw this in the store. I saw it working this way. To your point, the intended use might be A, but they're using it C. Yep. And so is that good? Is that what we want? How does that evolve? So I think being really conscious of each other and making sure you're listening and hearing each other out from all sides of the box is so important.
Yeah, that's good.
I would build on that and say, I think it starts with building an environment of trust, right? Because again, this is a different way of working for the teams. And that can be, intimidating and anxiety ridden, right, for associates, especially when they're interacting with senior leaders. And so I think early on we had to build trust with the team to say that if you have a different perspective, if you have a different set of experiences or intel that is pushing you in one direction that looks different than what Kellie or I or John or you would have been saying, it's building an environment of trust for them to challenge. And that takes time, and that takes us being very intentional about how we respond in those moments. And I think that trust has been built there, and you can see that, again, playing out in our product reviews and in other forums and in how the teams are working together.
What have you had to do differently, like as a leader? Not saying you needed to do things differently.
Sure, I did.
This is not not your evaluation.
Yeah.
So it could be if you wanted it to be. But because this is what I find is it's all fun and games, talking about ways of working and until crunch time hits. And then when crunch time hits and the pressure hits, and whether that's a team in a store, a team in a distribution center, or a team here at the home office, that's where some of those behaviors, called stress behaviors, start to show up. And as leaders, your stress behavior typically is this is the way we're going to do it, right? And you kind of jump in, or even team, if there's certain personalities within the 4 in the box, you'll see them kind of really kind of push in when that stress hits. But what are some things that you've had to do personally to kind of adjust?
Yeah, I'll probably say a couple of things. One is I've had to challenge fellow leaders. So I had to challenge you. I had to challenge Kelly at times, John at times, others, right? Which I wouldn't
It's awkward, right?
It is awkward. And I wouldn't say that I was even always personally comfortable with that, right? But again, knowing that it was the right thing to do for the team, for the work, et cetera, I needed to challenge my peers and lead up, right? Coach up. I think the other is trusting that I had to trust that the team knew more, that they know more. They're in the details. They're in the day-to-day. I like to think I am, but I'm really not, right? And so I think one of the mechanisms that I would use is to say that, like, when the team would call, anyone on the 4 in the box team would call or would be in a meeting and they're laying out a challenge or an issue, is to say, what do you think we should do? And that, again, takes like intentional effort.
Yes, it does.
Because to your point, like part of how I got to where I am, I think is because you made the call in the moment, right? And you set the direction. You said, this is what we're going to do. But pulling that back a little bit, right? And saying, tell me what you think we should do and tell me why. We talk about fact bases a lot on the team. We talk about recommendations, and they don't have to be pretty. Kelly, to your point earlier on, we're not looking for formal presentations and all of this. It's just bare bones. What's the situation? Right. What's the impact? What's the risk if we don't, what is the path forward in your mind? What steps do you think we should take to resolve this? And what's the risk if we don't? And so I think trusting the team to bring that information forward rather than having this emotional moment as a leader where you make a decision, but it might be a bad one, or it might be one that causes the team to lose trust in you or lose faith in the mission, is something that I feel like I had to do differently.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I feel like now I've only had a very small, very tiny moment of working within 4 in the box. It's a very new way of working, and it's been very refreshing, though, to come to the table and not have to have everything perfect, because you have other people that are coming to the table that have certain pieces of the puzzle that you don't have. And so when you come into the 4 in the box, it's a little scary because you might not have all the answers or you don't know what you're doing. But other people are coming in there with you and supporting you. And that's been something that's been really nice to fall back on. So I don't know if you guys have felt that too, but I know I have.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you quoted Drew in there.
Go fast.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think two things, from a leader perspective, you have to be disarming. Just because you have a plan and the plan's not working out doesn't mean you can't pivot, right? So we have to look at, okay, we can't do this, or it's not can't. It may be over here, right? We've had to move something else out, but what can we get? So I think for us, I've coined the phrase that we always say, Laura's smiling because she knows here it comes. It's called the messy middle, right? We're working to get to a great place. And we know that this might be just for a short time, but we're going to ladder up and it's going to be great and it's going to be, incredibly well done. And it's okay to learn during that process because to your point, you started off the show, Drew, we have to go talk to associates. We do not know everything. And that is we have to be really clear with ourselves, even with the 4 in the box team and the diversity that's in that team. We don't know it all. So go learn from associates, go see how they're using your tools, and then pull that in and then drive that forward and pivot that plan, right? Pivot that plan.
Yeah, it's so important. Mainly because we create something, we get user input, we iterate, and it's this constant process that never ends. How from a leader to leader perspective, how do you guys handle conflict? So
That's a great question.
None of us always agree. But how do you guys, how do you as two VPs within the company have very important jobs, but you also have to have a lot of conversation and teamwork between the two of you. But how do you guys handle conflict? Or you have an example of I'm sure there's constant conflict, but
I look at it as opportunity. And sure, you have challenges. And Laura and I, we're very conscientious. We always make sure we have a one-on-one, we have a chat stream going, we have a text stream going. So I think the biggest thing is we're open, right? And do we agree all the time? Absolutely not. I mean, you can't agree. If you're agreeing with everybody all the time,
there's no reason to have four in the box.
Yeah, there's no reason.
Right.
So there's healthy tension there, but there's also incredible respect and also a relationship, right? Like I know what, her boys do, right? She knows what my girls do, right? So you have a relationship and a personal relationship. And I think that's really important. And we have had our share of tension in our four in the box. And, I think part of it is sometimes you can't you might have a lot of people on that phone call. Maybe that's not the right audience. Yeah. So take it a minute. Let's pause. Let's regroup with maybe a smaller subset or the key participants. And let's maybe get some facts and ground ourselves where we are. And then we can have that conversation because everything may not be able to be solved in that moment of the conflict. Yep. So let's take a breath. Yep. Regroup. But what we have to do is make sure we intentionally regroup and we go solve it.
I would agree with that. I think it's exactly what Kelly said, which is part of it is just open, frequent, candid communication. And again, that doesn't happen automatically, right? Like we had to get to know each other. I felt a sense of responsibility as Kelly was joining the organization to help her be successful. And so we would have a lot of conversations just about like, how do you navigate this place? How do you navigate Walmart? Yeah. How do you navigate Drew?
How do you keep Drew in his box?
Exactly. And so it's just, again, you build that trust and it happens over time. And then, to Kelly's point, like as things happen in meetings, like I know where I need to stand down, I feel like, in terms of this is a decision that Kelly clearly owns and I need to let her own it and vice versa, right? So Kelly's like, what does the business want to do? What was Lara's perspective? And so we push the teams kind of back to each other as some of these, back to each other as leaders, as some of these things come up. And then I think the third thing would be is that we also, try to have the same relationships with our other business partners, right? Whether it's part of the four in the box or with support teams. We've tried to set up forums, again, have frequent conversations, candid conversations where you can hash everything out, typically around priorities, capacity, sometimes around direction, strategic direction. But we try to keep that to, for the most part, like outside of the team's purview, right? Like that isn't something that should play out at times, like in front of the team. Now, sometimes it should, right? Because back to my earlier point, like it is healthy for the teams to see us challenge each other because we shouldn't always agree. Why would we be in the positions that we are if that were the case? So I think that's contributed, I think, to the ways of working and to our ability to advance the strategy to the extent that we have.
So I have a question, and this is mainly from our viewers or our audience that might have this question too, but challenging people is a good thing. But how do you do it respectively? And how does that, when you build that relationship and you figure out, what do those conversations look like, how do you go about challenging each other respectively?
I think you can... we have a lot of opinions, right? Whether it be design or product or technology in our four in the box. And they're all really strong personalities. So for me, I'm just like, can we walk through your idea? And Alexis, it might take a hot minute and you got to slow down and be like, okay, well, tell me why you think that. So once I understand it, oftentimes your goal that you're trying to get to is not actually what we're trying to solve. Yeah. So if we can kind of, really make sure we have clarity on what we're trying to solve and that walk to get there, it might look a little different. Again, you can have a plan and pivot. And we all like plans. We all like targets. So if we're all, going towards this North Star, it's okay to have a little bit different path to get there. And just talking through that. And it does take time because it's easy, to your point, like there's a North Star, go, be there, right? But just stepping back and just spending the time and unpacking that. And, I can count on probably 2 hands plus the times we've had to do that with our team.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead. Sorry.
I think part of challenging respectfully is seeking to understand, right? Like that's where the respect comes in because you have to make this assumption that Alexis is raising this challenge because she knows more than I do. She has information that I don't have. She has perspective, right? Training, whatever, whatever that data, whatever that might be, that's causing you to challenge my position. And so you have to, again, kind of take that armor off and seek to understand exactly what Kelly said. We talk about asking the 5 whys, because something is motivating you, right, to challenge or to call that out. And I, as a leader, we as associates should just take a step back and say, there's a reason that you're bringing this forward, get to the bottom of that. And so I think that is the answer to how you respectfully challenge on the other side. You seek to understand.
Yeah.
I like Kelly, how you said this idea of you're rolling around in the problem, right? Being okay to being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's right.
And you guys, the reason I'm having you on here is you guys are 2 of the best collaborators I've ever worked with, just in general in your own right. And then seeing you guys together.
Sorry, I wanted to hit the button. That was a brr, 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 brr.
Which one?
The blue, I think.
I think it's more of...
yeah. Okay, that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I just thought it was a celebratory moment.
Yeah, it is.
I
like it.
Yeah, I gave a compliment.
You can use this as my eval.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah.
We'll cut that.
So
we'll
glad.
cut that
I'm so
compliment.
glad this is recorded.
Yeah, we'll cut that. Dave's going to cut
So
that
good.
compliment out. Anyways, but you guys are phenomenal at it. And but I like this idea of being uncomfortable, or being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and rolling around with, hey, here's the issue. Let's kind of let it set. Let's not let it pass through, because a lot of times we see tension and then we just let it go. We're like, I don't want to touch that, right?
Yeah.
But I think letting it develop a little bit is a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, switch gears some, but we have a focus in general. I think we all do have this desire to increase diversity around the table, right? And specifically women in tech. I think it's an interesting topic. I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on it. Laura, you've been in and out working with different technology. You've had a long career in working in technology. Any thoughts or advice to maybe somebody who's starting out or thinking about getting into this space, or this idea of creating solutions or technology in general? But we know we want to increase representation from women in technology. But any thoughts, Laura, on or advice that you would give, or any even personal experiences with that?
Yeah. I think it starts with kind of what we talked about here, which is creating space, right? And recognizing who is being quiet, who's not speaking up, and sometimes, not drawing attention to that in the moment, but taking the time to circle back and say, just kind of talk about why that is, and provide some encouragement rather, and build confidence there. I think part of it also has to do with our recruitment strategies. So again, being intentional there as we're hiring into these positions, because those are decisions rather that we as leaders make, and so we should that's an important part of our role, is just building out the talent in the organization.
That's right. Yep.
So I think that's a tremendous responsibility, and we can make a difference through those practices. I think the other is just looking for hidden talent. I think there are a lot of associates that are geared toward tech, that are geared toward STEM, but that would never tell you that. I would never tell you that is a strong suit of mine.
Yeah.
I seriously wouldn't, right? But I like it.
Yep.
I like being part of the process. I again am not degreed or credentialed or anything like that, but I can represent it, right? And I know why it matters, and I know what outcome we want to see as a result of that, and that's worth something. So I think looking for hidden talent that wouldn't necessarily raise their hand and say, oh yeah, I want to go into tech, but rather seeing how they work, what they do, how they think, and saying, actually, you might be a really good fit for this career path that you never would have imagined for yourself. So those are probably 3 things that are pieces of advice that I would give to women and to leaders in terms of how we can tap into talent and encourage women in particular to go into these fields, whether you have that background, that education, or not. If you have a passion for it, you're halfway there.
Yeah, and I love Laura's story is great. Started in the travel department at Walmart, and now she's working on technology to put devices in a million people's hands and improve people's lives, which is incredible. So that's really good. Kelly, what's your thoughts?
So absolutely, I hear Laura, you have to pause and make sure we hear people, but you have to make sure there's a seat and there's someone in it, and people have a seat at the table. So I think it's our job as leaders, when we're on calls, we're on meetings, we're looking around and making sure that diversity is there, and we have a chair for them, we give them an opportunity, and we pull the chair out and we invite them to the table, because you can't make an impact looking outside, looking in. So we've got to make sure they're at the table. I think secondarily, my advice to women in technology, I've been doing this a really long time. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to be the expert in everything. And it's okay to say something and not think it's 100% right? Roll around in it. Be uncomfortable. It's okay. And people really struggle. You can unlock so much when you're like, I'm so not comfortable with this conversation or this idea, or let's just think about this, or what if, and just go use it, go play with the technology, go understand it, and then just have conversations about it. I was in a store the other day, last week, and I was using something that everybody was really proud of. And I'm like, oh gosh, we got to change these things, team. And I was like, let's talk about that, right? And it was a really uncomfortable moment because the whole 4 in the box team there, and they're all looking at me. They're like, this is awesome. I'm like, yes, it's awesome. And it can even be more awesome if we do these things, right? So, and that's an uncomfortable moment, right? Because I want to make sure we're excited about it, but we have to roll around it when we got there, right? So I think making sure they have a seat at the table, be uncomfortable, right? Don't worry about being perfect. And then we have to go recruit. I know that I've done a ton of shouts out lately and bringing in women leaders and diverse leaders to have opportunities. Walmart's an amazing place to work. We have so much ahead of us. The runway is so long. Like I'm super excited. We have so much good stuff still to come. We got to get some more folks in here and help us drive it forward. So there's a lot to do, Drew. But we're doing a lot of it too.
Yeah, I like this. I like the idea of being okay, not being perfect. And I think everybody struggles with that, especially when you're new to the team or you're in a space that you're not really comfortable with and you want to kind of prove yourself. How do you overcome that? So even for myself, where you want to be the smartest person in the room, you want to know everything. As you move throughout the organization, you find yourself not knowing everything. Like I've come to that realization because you start to get put into positions where you're not going to be the expert. But how do you overcome that? Like, what's your thoughts on what would you give people who maybe find themselves in that position, or in a lot of cases, hey, I don't want to be in that position,
right?
So I'm not going to raise my hand to go do something because I don't know what's going on, and I don't want to be thrown in a position where I don't know stuff. Sure.
Well, for the record, you are perfect. So.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So.
Can you, Dave? Let's loop that. Let's loop that.
That's going to be his daily affirmation now. You are perfect.
Yeah. And send it to my wife. Thank you.
Yes. So in all seriousness, a couple things. So always come prepared. I think preparation and making sure you're well read and you understand different areas is really helpful, right? Because I think sometimes we fear the unknown. And so we don't speak up or we don't know the answer because we just don't even understand how that works. Yeah. So asking questions, asking the 5 whys, and just getting well-rounded and just learning more. And, I think we move so fast, we don't stop and read or watch or understand. And you have to designate time to learn and grow and, enhance yourself. Because if you're just focused on the work, you're going to just be focused on the work. Yeah. So
there's a little bit of personal responsibility there too, right?
I think so. I think so. And also have a buddy in the room. It also helps, or a friend in the room or on the call, right? That you can play off one another. So if you need that, I mean, I think probably kind of where we are, we're you have peers that you have colleagues that you work with, and you have your 4 in the box team, right? And those teams should pull together. But that's another tip. But you gotta expand outside of your remit.
I think we are imperfect people living in an imperfect world, and that's at work and that is outside of work. But it's it's tough, right? Especially to your point, if you're new to a team, you're trying to make a great first impression, you're in a leadership position and you carry a lot of weight, right? As it relates to that. And so I think one of the most important things that we can do as leaders is to be vulnerable, is just to, again, create an environment where, I am very clear about the fact that I don't know all the things. And if I ever arrive at a point where I do know all the things, then it's time for me to do something different, because that means that I'm not learning and I'm not growing.
That's right.
And so I think when you do that and you kind of let your guard down to some extent, right, then you again create space for the team, for associates in general, for other leaders to be comfortable. Again, not knowing all the things and not being perfect, because you are more perfect together than you are as an individual, right? Because it's the collective, right? Experiences and skills and education and observations and all of the things, right, that add up to the work that a quality work product or a quality work experience or a quality life. Maybe if you want to get super philosophical about it, but I think it comes down again to trust and vulnerability, and creating an environment that celebrates and appreciates imperfection.
Yeah, that's so good.
But I think we're getting better at it.
It's funny. I had a conversation with my 15-year-old last night, and as we all remember being 15.
I tried to block it out.
I try to forget it, but. Right, but it's those same fears and anxieties you had then that carry on throughout your whole life, right? And then you learn how to manage them and cope and all these kind of things. It would be interesting to have somebody on the podcast to talk through like why you have fears, where does that come from, in anxieties. But they're there for a reason, to protect you through some things, but they're also there for you to kind of push through. And no matter if you're 15-year-old boy, girl, whoever. It's fascinating to me to see when I talk to him. I'm like, am I talking to myself or am I talking to him? Because it applies. It applies. Like, oh my gosh, I see myself here.
Yeah.
Anyways, we might find somebody for the podcast to come in and just talk through that.
Sure. Yeah. Let me get right on that.
Yeah. If you could send some emails, that'd be great.
Sounds good. To-do list.
First of all, thank you guys. You both have a ton going on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Great
appreciate you coming in. You're both clearly making a difference in huge ways. And it's a pleasure just to be able to work with you guys. And I mean that wholeheartedly. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Any last advice? Anything could be somebody who's listening that wants to be the VP of product or associate experience sometime. They're early in their career and they're like, that's the job I want. Any last advice for them?
Go be curious. Be curious. Reach out. Talk to people, right? Don't sit in a box. Go. I mean, just go learn. And I think there's so much out there. I mean, there's so much information. There's so many opportunities to get to know people. And people are generous, especially at Walmart, with their time and with their energy. And please take advantage of it. Be brave. Be brave. Be curious.
That's great.
Yeah. I would say make sure you have a couple of folks like cheerleaders, people in your corner, right, that can encourage you and that can serve as trusted advisors, again, who you can be vulnerable with, and who will just kind of raise you up. I know that sounds cliche, but that's part of what's made a difference for me is I've had this, call them a gaggle of misfits that believe in me and that encourage me. And still to this day, like it doesn't stop. Once you get to a certain level. And I think to Kellie's point, it's continue to take on challenging assignments. If you believe in the mission and you believe it's the right thing to do, even if you don't have all of the tools in your toolbox, be committed to going and getting those tools, to building those skills and capabilities and continuing to learn. And from that, like amazing things happen when you have that mindset and that support system.
That's awesome. Keep doing great things, y'all. Appreciate you being on and have a great week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.